There's a massive new economic zone that is completely reshaping one of the world's busiest borders. So today, we're going to unpack the Causeway Catalyst, this incredibly ambitious mega project connecting Johor, Malaysia, and Singapore like never before.
Okay, let's just dive right in. Every single day, hundreds of thousands of people cross the causeway between Malaysia and Singapore. It's a vital economic artery, for sure, but it's also, a legendary bottleneck. So what if that border wasn't a barrier at all? What if it became a seamless bridge to a totally new kind of economy? That is the huge question at the very heart of this project.
And the scale we're talking about here is, well, it's just colossal. This thing, the Johor-Singapore Special Economic Zone, or JS-SEZ for short, is going to cover a massive 3,500 square kilometers. To really wrap your head around that number, just picture the entire island of Singapore. Now, multiply that area by almost 5. That's the sheer geographical ambition we're talking about here. It's an absolutely massive statement of intent. So how does a project this big even get off the ground? Well, it's really a story about two nations deciding to fundamentally rethink their entire relationship, kicking off what's easily the most significant cross-border project we've seen in a generation. And get this, they are not messing around. Things are moving at a remarkable pace. They signed an initial memo in early 2024, and just a year later, bam, a formal agreement is reached. This signals some serious political commitment from both sides, especially with that game-changing rapid transit system, the RTS link, which is on track to be up and running by the end of 2026. Now, to really get why this is such a huge deal, you gotta look at what they tried before. You might remember the Iskandar Malaysia project. That was mostly Malaysian-led, and frankly, it created a lot of uncertainty for Singaporean investors. The JS-SEZ, on the other hand, is built differently. It is a true bilateral partnership governed by both nations, and that provides the kind of stability and confidence that investors have been waiting for. All right, so what's the big why behind all of this? Why build something so massive? Well, it turns out the JS-SEZ is this really clever design. It's basically one giant solution that's meant to solve two very different, very specific problems, one for each country. So you've got two players with two very different issues. For Singapore, the problems are no secret. Sky-high operating costs and, of course, a chronic lack of land. Then you look at Johor. Their problem is a brain drain. All their talented workers leave for higher salaries in Singapore, and they really need to build their own high-value industries at home. And this is where it gets really smart. It leads to what they're calling a twinning model. The easiest way to think about it is brains versus brawn. Singapore provides the brain, all the R&D, the corporate HQs, the finance. And Johor brings the brawn, the huge amounts of land for manufacturing, the large-scale logistics, and the workforce to make it all happen. So how do you get companies and talented people to actually come? Well, you dangle some pretty juicy carrots. We're talking corporate taxes that could drop as low as 5%, a flat 15% income tax for skilled knowledge workers. Plus, they're setting up a one-stop center to slash through all the red tape. And get this, passport-free QR code border crossings. It's a recipe for a nearly frictionless economic engine. But, of course, an economic tidal wave like this, it's never that simple, is it? It doesn't affect everyone in the same way. It's already creating what you could call a tale of two fortunes, and it's creating some very clear winners and some very clear losers. I mean, the impact on Johor's real estate market was instant and, honestly, explosive. As soon as the news started to feel real, money just poured in. The average price of serviced apartments shot up by over 20%. Terrace houses up over 8%. The moment the zone seemed like a sure thing, the market just took off. And what we're seeing now is the birth of this whole new identity, the cross-border Singaporean. The idea is simple, but it's totally life-changing for some people. You earn a high salary in Singapore dollars, but you live and spend it in Johor, where you can afford a much bigger home and a much lower cost of living. And this is the real tension, the fundamental friction point of this whole project. For anyone earning Singapore dollars, their purchasing power basically doubles the second they cross into Johor.
But for the local Johorians earning in Malaysian ringgit, their wages are fighting a losing battle against the inflation being driven by all this new wealth. It's creating a massive affordability gap.
Let's just look at the raw numbers for a second, because they tell the whole story. Renting a one-bedroom apartment in central Singapore, that can set you back over 3,000 bucks a month. The equivalent in Johor Bahru is like a tenth of that. A cost difference that huge is the engine driving this entire social shift. So this brings us to the billion-dollar question, really. Is this a true partnership of equals? The official story is that it's a win-win for everybody. But when you look a little closer, you start to see a more complicated picture of who's really benefiting the most. Let's look at Singapore's side of the deal first. The wins for them are pretty clear, and they're very strategic. It solves their biggest problems, land and cost. It cements their status as a high-value global hub. And it allows their companies to bring profits back home. Bottom line, it makes them more competitive on the world stage.
But then you look across the Causeway and you see a different story. It's Malaysia that's footing the bill for most of the new infrastructure. It's their environment that's getting strained, their water and energy grids, and it's their local population that's absorbing all the social pressure from rising costs. The big risk for them is they end up becoming a very efficient but ultimately subordinate brawn economy.
So the plan looks fantastic on paper. The economic logic is powerful. But that doesn't mean success is a sure thing. So let's wrap up by looking at the critical headwinds that could slow down or even completely derail this incredibly ambitious project. It really boils down to 4 huge potential roadblocks. First, infrastructure overload. Can Johor's roads, power, and water systems actually handle this huge new demand? Second, that skills gap. Will there be a mismatch between local talent and the high-tech jobs the zone wants to create? Third, the social friction we've been talking about, the affordability crisis pricing out locals. And finally, political durability. Can a project this massive survive future changes in government on either side? And that leaves us right here with the final massive question mark hanging over this entire project. Will the JS-SEZ become that powerful engine of prosperity for the whole region, a model for the future? Or could it become a giant white elephant, a project so successful that it ends up being choked by the very traffic, inflation, and social pressures that it creates? The answer is going to define this region for decades to come.